Hello everyone and welcome to Throwing in the Towel, the weekly series where I take a hard look at the NFL's losers and decide which team's season is officially cooked. I'll go division by division, crown an AFC rep, an NFC rep, and finally pick the one team to throw in the towel on this week. And we start, per usual, in the AFC East, which has a lone representative in the Buffalo Bills. And this is a team that is running out of excuses and maybe a little magic too. Following a win over the Chiefs, the Bills had a letdown in a road divisional matchup in Miami, turning the ball over all three times in Miami territory. Trailing the Patriots in the AFC East with the Buccaneers next on schedule, the Bills need to ramp up the urgency to compensate for the injuries that are starting to become an issue, like to Dalton Kincaid, their starting tight end. Over in the North, we have a lone representative in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers' formula of defense, grit, and hope for a miracle is wearing thin. The defense is still fierce, but the offense, well, calling it offense might be too accurate. The Steelers didn't look like anything like a squad currently leading this division. By the way, that division lead has dwindled to one game with the Ravens in the midst of a 3-game winning streak. So their hold on the AFC North is slowly slipping away from them, and now it looks like the Ravens might end up just taking the division from them, which, where does that leave the Steelers when it comes to the playoffs? Over in the South, we have a lone representative in the Jaguars, and the hype train just hit a wall. Trevor Lawrence looks frustrated. The offensive line is getting bullied, and the defense is playing soft in big moments. For a supposed contender, they look lost and uninspired, like a team that's forgotten how to finish games, and that certainly is the case against the Texans. It wouldn't be quite fair to call their hot start to the season fraudulent. However, they have been beaten fairly convincingly in 3 of their last 4 games, and some significant issues, especially in the secondary, have emerged for this team. So things are starting to come undone for Jacksonville recently. I mean, they've kind of been up and down this entire season, but more so down than up. Over in the West, we have no representatives this week. The Chiefs, Broncos, and Chargers all got wins, while the towel has been thrown in on the Raiders, and they lost anyway. And we don't need to talk about that Thursday night football game between the Broncos and Raiders. That was just an ugly game. So we move on. Actually, no, the Chiefs had a bye. That's right, the Chiefs had a bye. They didn't win, they had a bye. Anywho, moving on to the division representatives this week. All lone representatives, so kind of give it all away. The Bills in the East, the Steelers in the North, and the Jaguars in the South. Interesting slate here, but somebody had to represent the AFC this week, and of these 3 teams, I went with the team least likely to make the playoffs of the 3, that being the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is your AFC representative for this week. Make sure to file that one away for the end of the video. And now we move on to the NFC side of things, starting per usual in the NFC East, which has a lone representative in the Washington Commanders. And it might be time for the Commanders to write off this season as a lost one. They're 3-7, decimated by injuries, and the foundations are starting to crack. At least they've been consistently mediocre. Dan Quinn must find a way to keep the locker room together for the remainder of the season, and maybe taking over play calling for the defense. Maybe that fixes things. I sincerely doubt it's going to do enough to get them to make them a contender, but maybe it does something, as their defense has been terrible so far this season, and Jaden Daniels being injured has not helped their offense at all, along with Terry McLaurin too. I mean, injuries are one thing, and then poor play on top of it. Over in the North, we have the Vikings and the Packers. And the Vikings are a fighting team, but the offense doesn't have the same rhythm, and the defense keeps giving up momentum killing drives. It's a proud team that just doesn't have the horsepower right now. The Vikings are going through growing pains with J.J. McCarthy, who has his ups and his downs in his first year as a starter, and will continue to have more ups and downs as a starter since it looks like they're just going to stick with him. Minnesota right now is a mediocre squad that may not finish above 500, and a tough division with rivals that have winning records. And for the Packers, they had a defensive battle with the Eagles, one that defensively was evenly matched. But there is some concern around the offense, and especially since that offense has only scored 20 points in 2 weeks and only scored 7 points in a game against the Eagles. Jordan Love did not have a good game, and the injuries on offense are certainly not helping. Tucker Kraft being out for the season, Matthew Gordon Golden currently being injured, Romeo Doubs now being added to that list. The Packers, though, have to figure out something. They have to tweak their offense and to better feature their healthy playmakers, or they'll just continue to drop in standings. Over in the South, we have the Buccaneers and the Falcons. For the Falcons, the overtime loss to the Colts might be it for them. It appears that the Falcons are once again what they have been for so many years, a pretender in the NFC South race. Their play calling is predictable, their red zone play is dreadful, and their defense looks tired of covering for it. The schedule is much more manageable over the next few weeks, but the only noise in Atlanta once the playoffs roll around will probably be from the television sets. And for the Buccaneers, offensively at least, they did many of the same things Sunday against the Patriots that propelled them to 6 wins over the first 8 games. Baker Mayfield playing good, and Ibuka having a good game. The running game being there, not as efficient without Bucky Irvin, but still there. But the defense blinked. Now, good news, Tampa Bay plays in the South, so they still have control of their division. But if they want to stay there and remain in the legit Super Bowl contender conversation, they need to figure out a way to get a win over their next 2 games. One of those games being against the Bills. I think the next one is against the Rams, if I remember correctly. And over in the West, we have the 49ers and the Cardinals. For the Cardinals, this is a team that has heart, but heart doesn't win games. Sunday's outcome is one of those where the Cardinals need to burn the tape and forget about what happened, considering Sunday's contest was over by halftime, and just start fresh. Just forget all about it. For the 49ers, this team is mediocre, at least through the last 7 games. They have rotated between wins and losses without losing or winning 2 straight. Now, Kyle Shanahan and company have understood the difficulties that lay ahead for them with the injuries that this team has sustained. And to offset those losses, defensive coordinator Robert Saleh has become more aggressive with his play calling, but San Francisco must still be wary of its limitations. Credit to Mac Jones, had another good game there as well too. Still no need to rush block Purdy back in, so that they are managing that one very well. But otherwise, it was just not a good performance from San Francisco. So now we move on to the division representatives for the NFC. In the East, we have the Commanders. In the North, we have the Vikings. In the South, we have the Falcons. And in the West, we have the Cardinals. So of these 4 teams, who is going to represent the NFC this week? Well, it's not the Commanders. It's the Cardinals. So with that, we'll move on to the recap section. So just to kind of go over some brief points, the Panthers are still a very inconsistent team. They won against the Packers and then last week against the Saints. Well, running game got shut down and so did the offense. Tough loss to the Saints right there too, and just further evidence that they are not a contender. Elsewhere on this list, not much else happened for their team. The Dolphins got a nice win over the Bills, although it's a nice little thing for the week. Same thing for the Saints. Like, hey, you got a nice little win to, at least get you a win. But, it's just a nice little win. That's all it is. And the Giants, I think, had the biggest news here. They did fire their head coach, Brian Daboll. I was a little surprised that it happened during the season. I thought at the very least they would probably evaluate things after the season. But I could certainly understand the thought process being like, hey, the Giants had the lead in a game and again blew it. So I could certainly understand if that was the thought process right there. Can't be doing that. But I certainly would have understood if they had waited to the end of the season and maybe even kept Daboll too, because it looked like him and Jackson Dart were on something. But alas, when you're the head coach and your team is blowing leads and losing games, you're gonna take the fall for it. This is kind of how it goes. And it looks like Joe Shane will keep his job as GM. Just don't look at his, I think, what was it, 22 and 21 and 22 draft classes. Don't look at those ones. Just look at the more recent ones, 23, 24. Look at those ones. Don't look at the other ones. So with that, we'll move over to the team for this week. Remember, the throwing in the towel Super Bowl matchup for Week 10 is the Jaguars in the AFC versus the Cardinals in the NFC. And the team that I'm officially throwing the towel on this week is the Arizona Cardinals. They fight hard, but that's about all they can do. The defense is gassed, the offense is guessing, and the future looks like it's 2 drafts away. The desert is dry, and so is this season. Throwing in the towel. Excuse me. I'm throwing in the towel on the Arizona Cardinals for Week 10. What does the future look like for this team? Well, I can imagine, based on the fact that they bench Kyler Murray, that is the future right there. They're going to keep Jonathan Gannon as the head coach and move on from Kyler Murray in the offseason and start over at quarterback. So that is my team for Week 10, the Arizona Cardinals. And that will do it for this Week 10 episode of Throwing in the Towel. I will see you all next week.